welcome back to another episode of The Butterfly Analogy. My name is Alex, and I hope you guys are all doing well at the start of this week. I want to touch upon what happened last week and why I didn't post anything, and it's because I just really wasn't in the right mind space to just speak on something. The video or the episode was supposed to be surrounding this show I was watching on Netflix. And although I do feel passionately about this show, I just felt like my thoughts while recording the episode just wasn't flowing the way I wanted them to. So then I started overthinking, and I just wasn't proud of what the episode looked like. And yeah, so long story short, I didn't post anything last week, but I really do hope that kind of gave me the stamina that I needed to continue on this journey. And I think it did. I feel a little more confident right now on the camera, which is what I wanted. Anyways, thank you for understanding why I didn't post last week. And thank you for still continuing on this journey with me. On today's episode, I wanted to kind of dissect what a birth chart is and my birth chart in a sense. I wanted to kind of talk about this because I always kind of like mention on the episode, I'll be like, oh, like my Venus in Cancer, or I'll be like, oh, my Jupiter in Gemini. So because I always kind of talk about those things, I kind of felt like maybe I should really touch upon what they actually are so that you guys might know, because I know a lot of us are still kind of exploring what spirituality is and what astrology is and all of that kind of stuff. So I did want to talk about that. Now, astrology is not to be confused with astronomy. Astronomy, it's basically the study of the stars and the study of the planets and the way they kind of revolve around each other and their placements. But astrology is more so the study of how the stars impact who you are and the way the placements of the planets impact who you are as a person. It's very objective, right? It's not to be, I wouldn't say not to be taken literally, but there's like an artistic kind of interpretation behind them. Although there isn't a clear science to kind of back it, at least not one that I've necessarily researched yet, it's more so, at least for me, I use it as a way to kind of understand myself on a deeper level, or to kind of answer questions that I have about myself that I don't necessarily know the answers to. Like, why is my approach to love different than somebody else's? Like, obviously we're all different, but this kind of gives you an insight on as to how the planets and how the stars and how the placements of both kind of give you who you are, essentially, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. I have a screen recording that I'm going to use also to kind of like showcase the website that I use. There's tons of websites out there. There's lots of applications. I use The Pattern. I do use CoStar, even though like I heard it's like a cheat sheet and you shouldn't necessarily use it, but I still use it. Do what makes you happy, guys. I also use Astro Cafe. It's a website. That's the website I'm going to be using today. This is not sponsored, by the way. But Astro Cafe, if you ever stumble upon my video on the internet, please sponsor me. I'm kidding. No. But, you know, if you might want to in the future, I'll manifest it. Hopefully. But yeah. So I guess I can start with your big three. Big three meaning your sun, your moon, and your rising. Although your characteristics aren't just solely determined on those three signs within your birth chart, it can kind of give you a basic idea of who you are, essentially. Your sun sign is who you are on the surface. So it's the sign most people relate you to. If your sun sign is in a water element, so Pisces, Cancer, and Scorpio, you're mainly seen as emotional and sensitive and nurturing, just a very caring kind of person. If your sun sign is in an air sign, Gemini, Aquarius, and Libra, you're mainly seen as like more playful and very talkative and very social, just adventurous. If your sun sign is in a fire sign, so Sagittarius, Leo, and Aries, you're very passionate and creative and fiery, philosophical, if you're a Sagittarius especially. That's who you'll mainly be seen as. Now, your moon sign is who you personally feel connected to the most. I'm personally a Leo moon, meaning my emotional world is very dramatic and expressive and creative, and very passionful, especially because it's a fire sign in my moon. So your moon kind of helps you understand how you navigate your emotions and how you navigate your personal world. If you have a moon in an air sign, right, you might seek adventure to kind of cope, or you might seek, liberating avenues to kind of understand how you're feeling in the moment. If you're a water sign, you might be prone to showing emotional displays a little more, like crying and stuff like that, Now, I'm not a complete expert on this. This is just how I understand how everything is happening from my personal knowledge and obviously whatever I have researched. So if you want like a complete take on what this all kind of means, definitely like do your own research and, seek out other people that professionally understand what astrology can kind of give to you. That leads me to your rising sign. Your rising sign is basically your first impression to the world. So if you're meeting somebody new, if you're going on a date and like you're getting to know someone for the first time, this is what they most likely will compare you to or associate you as. So my rising sign is in Capricorn. I could be seen as structured, serious, very serious, practical. But if your rising sign is in, let's say, a water sign, Pisces, you might be seen as more dreamy and more emotionally in tune, more vulnerable. But then again, that's just a first impression. So then when somebody gets to know you, they'll most likely start to see your sun sign come out. Mine is in Cancer. So they'll most likely start to see my emotionality or my nurturing aspect because it is a water sign. And then once you really get to know me, like close family, close friends, you'll start to see the moon aspect, which mine is obviously in Leo, since I always like to bring it up. You'll start to see that aspect come out where it's like I'm very creative and I love to express myself through creative pursuits. And obviously you guys can kind of start to see my moon come out now too, with the podcast and with my art and with my filming. So you can kind of start to see where that creative kind of side starts to come out. But not only do these three signs, your major big three, kind of give you an insight on as to who you are, there's also placements within your birth chart, like first house, second house, third house, fourth house. It goes all the way up to 12. And these different houses kind of signify different things, such as your first house is your appearance and who you are. Your second house is focused on career and where you mainly make money or how you make income. Your third house is, I believe, the way you communicate, if I'm not mistaken. Now, again, this is brief introduction of where I kind of lie within this, but while I'm dissecting the chart, we can kind of learn together. But just as a brief overview, your fifth house is basically Jupiter, the planet of luck. So where you're most lucky in. Your seventh house, or Venus, right? This is where I'll always kind of start to kind of mention my Venus in Cancer. Your seventh house is basically the house of partnerships and relationships. A lot of my major planets are in my seventh house, so a lot of my energy will be kind of placed in creating friendships and maintaining a relationship. So that kind of makes sense now, right? So now that we kind of have a brief overview, I'll get more into detail right now as I'm starting to dissect. So this is astro.cafeastrology.com for my listeners. So it's astro.cafeastrology.com. And this is my main kind of website that I use to navigate my birth chart. So you can create a new chart for free. It's completely free, which I love, right? And I'm pretty sure everybody else would like to. So you go to create a new chart and you insert your name. You don't necessarily need to insert a pronoun. It doesn't really change much. You definitely need to insert your birth date, exact birth date, as well as exact time of birth. So I know a lot of us, especially now surrounding dating, kind of will ask for these things to determine whether or not we're compatible with each other. Now, astrology alone can't really predetermine that, even though it can kind of give you a good idea of whether or not you are compatible. But make sure that, you communicate with your partner and you understand the way your charts kind of trine each other or oppose each other. I'll get into those details after so that you can actually maintain a healthy relationship. So anyways, so your time of birth is very important because this will give you the exact picture of what the stars look like at the exact time you were born in. Now, I'm not going to give you guys my complete birthday and birth time just because within the Chinese culture in feng shui, it's kind of seen as bad luck just because people can kind of determine like what your sign or what your birth chart looks like. So I won't be doing that, but I'll be giving you a brief look into what mine looks like. Besides time of birth, you also need to enter your birthplace. These two things will kind of affect the way your rising sign comes out and the way the planets move, especially Earth, since it's rotating consistently. It's going to affect the way the stars are placed at the respective time that you were born. So I'm going to go ahead and insert my information now. Now I'm not going to show you guys like I said. All right, so I entered my information and the first page that pops up is introduction to your birth chart report. So this short description is basically just telling you the basics of what the birth chart is going to be telling you about. So you're basically finding out the positions of the planets in your natal chart by sign. The most personal of these are sun sign, moon sign, Mercury, Venus, Mars, and also your rising. We already touched upon sun and moon sign. Mercury sign is the planet of communication, the way you communicate, and Venus sign is the planet of love. Mars, I think, is the planet of aggression, but always do your own research. Like I said before, your birth time will kind of affect your ascendant, or people also know it as a rising sign, as well as the positions of the planets in the house. So it's going to give you like a brief overview of what your birth chart looks like. I'm not going to personally show mine because, as I mentioned before, I think it's going to be bad luck. Personal belief. But The sun is in Cancer for my sun sign. So these natives, it says, have a strong survival instinct. So Pisces, Scorpio, and Cancer are mainly seen as the mothers of the group or the nurturers, right? So we're very protective of everyone around us. We're very sensitive. We don't appreciate bluntness. I really don't appreciate bluntness because like, my feelings get hurt. My sun sign is in my 7th house, right? The sun and where it's placed can kind of give you a better look into who you are personally. The sun sign on the surface obviously just gives you your surface leveled personality, but if you really take the time to figure out your planets and all of that, you can kind of understand it. So my sun sign is in the 7th house. So I take a lot of pride in negotiating and establishing harmonic relationships, and nurturing relationships as well. Because my nurturing sign of Cancer is within my 7th house of partnerships, for the most part, I'll be very nurturing towards my relationships with others. Now, there's also something called conjunctions. Trining planets, conjuncting planets, opposing planets, and trining planets. Trines and also sextile. Trine and sextiling planets are a very positive aspect. So that means they're kind of working together in a positive way to kind of give you who you are. Squaring and opposing can be a negative aspect of the planets. So they're kind of opposing each other in the angle they're making, meaning they're not necessarily working together. They're kind of like working differently and will affect you in that way. Conjuncting planets are neutral, so it doesn't really make much of an impact as obviously opposing and trining planets or sextiling planets. That also plays a role into who you are and what kind of lessons you'll learn or what kind of things you'll go through in life. So I have a conjunction between my sun and my Mercury. My ego and my mind are usually on the same page. I possess lots of mental energy. I'm always in a position to think about what I want. You are highly intelligent with a great drive to communicate with others. And I invest a lot of pride in intellectual capacities. So this is definitely kind of gearing a little towards the podcast and how I love to talk and stuff. But it also says that I might not listen as well as you speak, which I definitely can see because I tend to interrupt people sometimes, which I'm trying to work on though. And I'm glad that I said that because although there is a specific aspect in your chart, it doesn't necessarily mean that you'll always be this person. There's always free will, of course. So you could always change things you don't necessarily like. I also have a conjunction between my sun and Venus. Social relationships are extremely important to me, definitely. You are generally charming with an easygoing manner. It's generally quite important to you that you are personally popular, to come across in a pleasant way, and to be liked and appreciated. I kind of have this thing where I kind of want everyone to love me, even though I know that's not always going to happen, but I'm learning, guys. It also says I have a fine eye for style and enjoy pleasing surroundings. Definitely, you are gracious, romantic, and sometimes romantically impulsive. Definitely. I'm very romantic. I love rom-coms, by the way. So I wanted to touch upon an opposition that I have currently in my chart. So I have an opposition between my sun and Lilith. So this can kind of signify a self-destructive side driven by fear. And then I also have an opposition between my sun and ascendant, meaning the person I kind of project within the general public or in the public eye is different than the person I feel most at home with inside when I'm alone. So outwardly, I can seem to be very confident and I can seem to be very secure in who I am. But within, there's definitely a lot of insecurities that I still need to work on, especially surrounding like feeling enough. because that's something that I don't necessarily feel secure with. Like, I don't necessarily feel enough sometimes, but then when I talk to people in public, they don't really see that side of me. And I guess it's because of this projection of character that I do because of my opposition between sun and ascendant. Remember, your sun is who you are at the surface, ascendant is who people perceive you to be at first glance. But then that leads me to my moon in Leo. And according to Cafe Astrology, this is a rather creative position of the moon. At the very least, moon in Leo people want to create and entertain. If that doesn't make sense, I don't know what will. Why do I say that? Well, obviously, creating and entertaining. Yeah. So this is who I mainly feel at home with, is my Leo moon, because this is how I express myself emotionally, intellectually, and physically. They require lots of love and care in order to function well in the world. That is also true. I really am working on my need for external validation, because that's definitely something I need to work on. But I do like to feel validated. My Leo moon likes to feel validated, obviously. So in relationships, I kind of seek validation the most, because then it makes me feel like I am enough. Since I have a Leo moon in an 8th house, I have a strong need for emotional security. I can be prone to pushing my own limits, and I can also be prone to many lifestyle changes, which I do see. And it also says reinventing yourself emotionally. I definitely see where that is, because I'll tend to kind of derive confidence from changing my appearance out of the blue. For example, after I graduated high school, I chopped like my hair off. I went from having like hair down like mid back to literally hair like at my chin. So that was like a first series of transformation. And then I got my nose pierced also when I was going through something, because for some reason it just boosted my confidence. It also says that I'm fascinated with how people work. I love understanding people, and I love observing how they kind of interact with each other, or observing how what I do kind of affects people in a sense. And then that leads us to Mercury. Mercury represents to communication and logical spirit, according to Astro Cafe. Again, please sponsor me. So my Mercury is in Cancer, so my communication style is very emotionally driven. I communicate based off of how I feel, or I let my intuition guide me while I am communicating. I tend to kind of feel or really listen for what the emotion behind the words are. For example, yesterday I was having a conversation with one of my friends, and although he was saying something on the surface, to me it felt like he was saying something completely different because of the emotion that he placed behind that. So although he probably didn't mean it in such a deep, literal way, because I tend to communicate based off of the feeling within the room, I took it in a deeper level, and I was like, oh, so is this how you really feel? And then I kind of pried out the words out of him, which I try not to do. Like, I don't mean to pry, but because I'm trying to understand the emotion behind it, it kind of gets hard not to do that. My Mercury is also in my 7th house, meaning communication with the partner is craved, and you also love an audience for your own thoughts and opinion. I love speaking and intellectually conversating on different topics of interests. I like to get to deeper meanings behind very literal things in life. So I have a conjunction between my Mercury and Mars. So it says I like discussions, debates. I loved debating in high school. Mr. Fanning, shout out to you, man. You were awesome. I loved his class because I could take the podium and just speak the way I felt, speak about different topics that interested in me, and I just love being able to do that. And then we have Venus, obviously, the planet of partnerships, and I have a Cancer in Venus, so for me, I definitely need security and stability. We seek security, comfort, and care, and Venus and Cancer people show their love by caring for you. They pay more attention to your feelings than your words and observe you rather carefully. They want a safe and solid relationship. This is so true, especially since I don't do well in loving environments that don't necessarily have a factor of predictability. It doesn't necessarily make me feel safe. And I do love caring for people. I love taking care of people and nurturing my partners. I love giving. I love intimacy, not in a sexual way, but obviously just like touching and caressing and hugging. I love cuddling. I love affection. My Venus is also in my 7th house, meaning her fate can depend a lot on partnership, may connect for love, children, and happy emotional life. Yeah, sometimes I feel incomplete without a partner, which is not a very pleasing thing to feel, but I'm trying to work on that aspect because I want to be able to feel whole without necessarily having someone else, so that way it won't affect my mood on other things, and I can kind of understand what it's like and feel at peace with what it's like to be alone at home. Mars represents the desire for action and physical energy, so this is definitely the way we express ourselves. So my Mars is in Cancer. This position inclines toward passive aggressiveness. These people seem to resist change and to shy away from direct confrontation. I hate direct confrontation. I hate being confrontational in general. It's just a very uncomfortable feeling for me. So I do tend to be passive aggressive, and I won't be direct about how I feel, but I'll kind of make you know that I'm not feeling a certain way. Definitely an aspect I need to work on because being passive aggressive is not right. And sometimes people don't understand why you necessarily feel the way that you do. So I need to work on communicating better without gearing towards passive aggressiveness. So my Mars is also in my 7th house, meaning that I can be particularly good at mediating, counseling, troubleshooting, debate, politics, or working with the law. I definitely see where counseling kind of fits in because I did want to be a school counselor, and debating, obviously, because I love to debate and mediating. I remember when I was growing up, I had to kind of understand how to approach a situation without taking sides when it came to my parents, because I was always placed in the middle of things. The next planet is Jupiter. Jupiter represents expansion and grace. This is the planet of luck. So most of my good fortune is when I use my wit and ingenious, as well as when I'm versatile, sociable, curious, and put others at ease with friendliness and sincere curiosity. I love being sociable. I love talking and meeting people. I love writing and expressing myself through communication. And then Saturn is the planet of karma. So my Saturn is in my 4th house. And what does it say? She achieves her objectives in spite of slow progress, with some hurdles to overcome. She is persevering, patient, very stable. This house can also indicate the relationships you've had within your family. So Neptune represents transcendental liberty, so spirituality and how spirituality affects who you are. My Neptune is in Aquarius, so I tend to be very intuitive and sensitive. I can be indecisive. It usually projects an image of softness. Is that true? Y'all tell me. Comment below and let me know. May have some identity problems until she decides on a more spiritual and artistic path. That's exactly what I'm trying to do now. May be psychic or simply strongly intuitive, gentle and yielding, changeable appearance or image, particularly if Neptune is close to ascendant. So I have a sextile between Neptune and Pluto, which can mean that I'm very perceptive and able to see layers of a situation. Naturally drawn to learning what makes yourself and others tick. I see where that fits in. I tend to overanalyze a lot of things, especially situations, and I try to kind of replay it in my head to kind of see like why this necessarily happened the way that I did, or why did I necessarily cause this reaction in someone else, or why did this person cause this reaction within myself. So I see where that comes to play a role. But then I do have a square between my Neptune and midheaven. Remember, square can be a negative component to how the planets are placed in your birth chart. So it may lack assurance, self-confidence. Yes, I sometimes can feel very insecure about certain aspects of myself. So this is basically a rundown of what your chart might look like if you do take time out to actually observe how the planets and how the stars affect how you are. Again, if you want to get a deeper insight on as to what that looks like for you, definitely go on to Astro Cafe Astrology or any other website. I know there's astro.com too, CoStar, and I use the pattern to kind of help you figure out what it is you want to figure out. There's different things that you can kind of take away from your birth chart, as in career aspects, financial understandings, relationship takeaways. It's definitely a cool thing to take a look into. I hope this kind of helped to kind of start your journey into diving into astrology and how it can kind of help you out. But I hope you guys definitely enjoyed this episode. Thank you again for watching. Feel free to follow me on my personal page at a.xo.x and stay beautiful, my loves. Bye.